honored to be here, especially in front of Ibu Dialita. This is my first time in a conference where I meet you. Ini baru pertama kali saya bertemu ibu-ibu di sebuah konferensi, jadi saya sangat merasa terhormat. Thank you very much for Professor Mohan as the invitation and Dia Pitaloka for visiting me in Minneapolis. I must confess, this is my first talk in Singapore. It sounds silly, but it is. It's the idea of politics of neighborhood, the anxiety between Indonesian and Singaporean academics. Yes, and I'm very grateful for this opportunity. Before I start my talk, sebelum saya memulai pembicaraan saya, I just want to acknowledge that my work fully inspired by all the survivors and the victim of 1965. And I want to share first a kind of introduction, what is the dance about, so that we know and we understand, as Mohan already mentioned, the aesthetic is not only about aesthetic, it is about the political commitment. And that is my job. So I'm with honor will start. I'm a performer, it's so difficult with this. And I prepared a paper. It's going to be probably somewhere, so I'm just going to talk to you and then dance, and it's feel more proper for this audience. The ghost story that my grandmother shared is about unfinished death, in which the children, the grandchildren, have an obligation to revisit such kind of death. So the ghost story is always being mentioned as something that the children could not touch or could not imagine because it's a ghost. So basically it's a politic of mapping place and space in our neighborhood, which one is considered proper that we could play, or which one that carefully should be rethink and revisit what is the space about. The ghost story in East Java is always talking about, forgive is little bit going to be close, hat that being chopped, kepala yang dipotong. Is that correct translation? So that the body is only about invisible body. Because my grandmother did not agree to share a story about killing. So she preferred a story about ghosts that only have head but no body. Because the killing in East Java was all about separating the head and the body. So that story of ghosts is my childhood text. So it's very strongly embodied and taught me about the idea of fear, anxious, which neighbor have a good ghost and which neighbor have a bad ghost. So it's a mapping which one is the killer and which one is the victim family. So that story of ghosts is my inspiration to start the idea of the invisible. So, with humble, one day I will start dancing. The dancing nothing to do with the hat and the body that's separated. The dance is always about the story about goddess. So actually my paper today, which I prepared very seriously because I thought, wow, National University of Singapore. So I worked very hard using 15 theories in my paper, and I could share with Dia that if she wants to share. But in honoring the ibu-ibu that present here, I switched my tactic. And the story about dancing goddess, I'm going to tell and to dance together with. So the dancing goddess is where my family would train and dance all the time before most of them were missing. My aunt one day told me, I danced on television when I was little. So my aunt told me, it's good for you, you dance and you can perform in television. For me, my aunt said, I rehearsed morning, afternoon, night, day by day, hour by hour. When I was so excited to perform, suddenly somebody said, you cannot dance, and stop. So that the word you cannot dance was also my inspiration in studying which kind of dance, in what type of dance being viewed as the ruling or unruly dance. My family mostly were Muslim, born and grew up Muslim. Half of them are Maduris, half of them are Osen, and mixed with many kind of things. So it wasn't the idea of ethnicity that was problem for them, but it was the idea of the dancing goddess. So that dancing goddess that forbidden to be danced, then it's become a question that today I would like to call and to share with you as a question of embodiment of ecology consciousness. Because the dancing goddess, with this moving, the bat, half circle, was strongly attached with the idea of the land and ownership. It was the woman and dancing goddess that parade along East Java village that made them shaman and spark as a beginning of the harvest time. It was the context of feminists in the old style that already feminist without discourse that made them shaman. And that dancing goddess without discourse on feminism was that, and most of them were killed. In honoring that story, my grandmother's story about ghosts and my aunt's story about dancing goddess, I would like to present to you now the idea of dancing goddess that at that time were never performed. But yeah, so that is one of the learning, the dance technique that I try to engage, negotiate, and thinking about it, so that through the embodiment of dance technique, I was able to retrace why and how my family would disappear. So dance technique is not, and it will not only about the idea of dance technique, but that dance technique is my tactic to retrace that particular history. So many questions has been arrived to me because I have been living almost 20 years in the US. I decided to leave Indonesia when I realized that I would not be able to negotiate this idea of retracing at that time. But the dance technique was make me always feeling grounded and at home. So that dance technique is my remembering what has been forgotten, and my dance technique was my honoring to my grandmother and my mother and my family, so that I will never separate with their identity. So I close until that, only that, and welcome to ask me any question.